Have you checked the children? Your little match sometimes.
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
Sometimes that is better.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Howdy folks, welcome back to the Horror Show. I'm Robert Duell.
And you got Jaime and Fuego here for a double down, bit of coverage for our dude SK, longtime supporter of the channel, and one of the biggest purveyors of commentary suggestions. Not a commentary for this one today, though. This is a duo of, I guess, kind of vampire movie stuff.
Vampire shapeshifter kind of stuff,
yeah.
Warlock, wizard, witch shit. You know.
Yeah, just all kinds of otherworldly stuff, but set to the backdrop of Moscow starting in the 90s, and then we forge ahead to 2004 and then 2006 for Night Watch and Day Watch, directed by Timur
You know, it's one of those Russian last names.
Yeah, goddamn, we are sorry, sir. But Timur was he went on to do Wanted in the States, along with you said
Abe Lincoln, Vampire Hunter.
Yeah, and he has a very, very accomplished visual aesthetic. Even if some of the effects in these films look dated and the mythology is a little convoluted at times, most notably in the sequel film, I think I still found this to be a very vibrant and fascinating world and mythology, and especially getting like that kind of Euro-goth kind of club-centric mid-2000s sort of approach to this. Now, this is based on a book entitled The Night Watch that did have a sequel,
which is
called
a trilogy,
Day Watch.
actually.
It's a trilogy, but neither of these two films from 2004 or 2006 actually adapted anything after the first book, from what I understand. It was all just based on sections of that first book, albeit relatively loosely. And so as I kind of gave some initial thoughts, it's rich mythology. I didn't always like it that much, and it's a little more fantasy, kind of supernatural than it is like full-on horror, so to speak, at least in my estimation. But there's a really cool idea, notable ones like the gloom and stuff about this that I really dug. Can't say I love either of these films, though, although I do greatly prefer the first one before we get into story about each of them. How about you, man?
No, like equally, just on touch real quick of both of them at once. They're fun. Are they perfect movies? No. Yeah. But they, again, it's those. As long as you can find little merits in the movie, then good. Enjoy it, and that's what I found with this one, especially with Night Watch. I actually was following this back in the day when it was initially released in development through upcoming horror movies, and following this and whatnot. And I've loved the first movie since I was like 14 or whatever when it came out. Again though, like these movies could have been better. Now that especially you were saying that apparently the first and second movie are just little bits of the first book, which is pretty disappointing. But that actually makes me want to go and seek out the trilogy and actually read them for myself. Yeah,
I felt the same way, especially since they had a Twilight Watch third film that was originally in development, and that was presumably going to cover some stuff from later books in this trilogy. I couldn't find any specifics about whether it was going to actually be based on Day Watch, the second book, or go to the third or whatever. But Timur decided he felt like stylistically a lot of it was going to be retread of things he was planning for the film Wanted with Angelina Jolie and James McAvoy, that he went on to kind of solidify his status in the States with, and so
style
he just,
too.
So he just abandoned the project, and so we just ended up with these two. But I'm kind of curious about these three books as well, especially since I feel like maybe some of that convoluted mythology, if I was to actually read the books, I would
make more sense.
It a little bit better.
I definitely feel, and like it's one of those. It definitely feels like one of those universes where it's like Dark Tower. It ain't good. It's almost impossible to be able to put all of that into a movie without all the stuff that you actually have to take out in order to cram it down in a little hour and a half, 2 hour movie. Yeah.
Excessive sacrifice, which I mean, for those who understand the material, maybe. I mean, just like even with the new Stand, if we're going to do another King reference, it's like, you will be okay with a lot that's happening maybe if you know what's really going on from the source material. So
hell, even that threw me from a loop, and I've read the book 2-3 times.
Yeah.
And there was times I'm like, who the hell is this person? Oh, that's supposed to be you?
Yeah.
The hell? But other than that, so story real quick. Do we already do an overview of the plot, or
I mean, not so much.
Okay, so
not so much.
basically, so real quick overview of
we start out way back in the day.
Yeah, we start off way back.
So
we meet our character of Anton, and
even further back initially with like just the backstory about the struggle between the light,
between the light and the dark and everything
and
like
stuff,
that. Yeah, so there was so starting way back. Yeah, there was these two warring factions of the light and the dark. And they basically got lodged into this X amount of years battle because, again, they're kind of basically immortals, so it just kept going and going and going.
Yeah, they're called others.
Yeah, and it got to the point where that they called the truce and they broke off into two factions. So the Night Watch would watch the Day Watch, and the Day Watch would watch the Night Watch.
Keep each other honest.
Exactly, yeah, keep everyone accountable. And then, okay, so now we jump forward into the future / to the past.
The 90s.
Yes. We meet our character of Anton. And he sought out this witch to basically put a curse on his ex-wife and to kill her unborn baby. And during this whole thing, he learns that he's one of the others, which is these groups of like the light and the dark that can basically what is it there was the gloom. Yeah, so basically they can travel in and out of this purgatory called the gloom.
Yeah, and they're clued into these otherworldly forces of vampires and shapeshifters, and so that's where I wanted more understanding and development, because initially, and maybe even back when I watched this first movie, it was like, oh, these Night Watch guys, like, they're good vampires, but no, that's not the case, and not all of the people in the dark that are part of like the Day Watch are like, I don't know, creatures are something separate from these others, and that was where I'm really glad I rewatched both of these movies for the first time in a while to try to get some more clarification, and yet I still don't feel like I had enough of it. And at times
we do get to see some of like our shape-shifting characters like
in the first movie,
like that work with Anton and things like that, and then but for the most part this focuses more on like vampires and witches. That's what really these fall into. So it's like when going into the books, I hope they actually introduce more of all these other creatures that they
I know which one you would like.
Yes, because that's the funny thing too is like even in the original description on upcoming horror movies when they first released that this was in development, that was one of the things that they were highlighting is of like werewolves and shapeshifters like that. Yeah, we gotta wear tiger, which is fine, you know.
Yeah. But the early stuff with so basically Anton discovers in the 90s that when he's consulting that witch that he has this ability. He is one of these others, and so. Speed forward like 12 years later to 2004, and he's been recruited, and he's been working with them for a number of years, working with a bunch of others.
12 years.
Yeah, in this night watch that is basically kind of going around and keeping the peace in the evening hours, and that, making sure some of these creatures of the night or whatever. But there's also like a lot of different politics about like, being able to get certification to go and kill and
drink human blood, things like that. Yeah, there's a whole like law system that was actually
and that's what they kind of police. Yeah,
it was intriguing, but there was a lot of the plot holes that just didn't make any sense. And I'm just gonna say this real quick: our main guy Anton, he is not a hero.
No,
like
he's the reluctant hero who got kind of roped into it.
He can't fight for dick. Like he got his ass kicked within the first 30 seconds of the fight.
Yeah, and that's in the first fight where he goes into the gloom, right?
Yeah,
and they have warned him not to do that, and yet he goes in.
But also doesn't help. He's consistently drunk.
Yeah, that too.
Like, he's consistently drunk, and he's a shit show. Like
and in both films, I mean, he's a little bit more cleaned up by the time we get to our sequel.
To a point and everything. Yeah.
But so it's basically him romping around and helping out, but it really comes to a head when there is this long time prophecy that is possibly coming to fruition of there being a great one, somebody appearing that is so powerful with their abilities that they could spill blood on the other side and break the truce, and then it would in turn become just a mass anarchy of conflict and lots of human collateral damage in the process, as well as presumed other sorts of creatures of the night and things of that nature. And it's this younger boy who might have a connection to Anton without us getting into specifics, but
allegedly.
And then he has this little love interest thing that is going on with this nurse woman who has been taking care of her, taking care of the boy, I should specify. And it's really, as they discover this boy's power, they wonder if he is in fact the one prophesized, and then it's the scheming kind of both the light and the dark, the night watch and the day watch, to see what side he will choose as we pull the curtain back and get a little bit more information. And I mean, this is dense stuff. You definitely have to believe that if you read the book, you would get a much better understanding of the lore.
Yeah,
and
especially
the
with this too. It's like there was technically like 2 or 3 different plots within this movie.
Oh yeah.
So like there's our story of Anton and the boy, and then our secondary character in a sense of Svetlana, which she was cursed, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't get the full nature of her abilities until the second film.
Yep.
And so, or actually near the end of this one, if I remember
near
correctly.
the end of it and everything, but then they officially touch into it on the second film of her being a badass, actually.
Yeah, because these two films definitely link up. Like it doesn't feel like an original film and a sequel to me. It does feel much more like a part 1 and a part 2, even if I did not like the second part anywhere near as much as far as how things went on to be developed and certain abilities and whatever. And the second film, basically, the kid chooses a side without spoiling it, and yet it kind of switches gears to this ancient guy who is in northern Iran, and I believe he was an actual physical kind of conquering figure who won an immense amount of battles, but they fit into the lore here, the fact that he found this specific chalk that was hidden in a labyrinth.
Chalk of fate.
Yeah, chalk of fate that was hidden in this labyrinth, and basically you can write something down and it would come into fruition, but there is a stipulation about only being able to change stuff that directly ties in with you.
You can only change your fate.
Yeah,
you can't
things
change
you
anyone
have
else's.
had a deciding factor within.
And that one thing that I definitely liked. That was a
very
cool
different
little,
in the second film in that regard.
Yep.
Yeah.
Even when we come back to like some of those characters that we have introduced even in the earlier part of the movie towards the later half.
Yeah, and we do and since these films are only 2 years apart, we have just about the entirety of the returning cast from the higher ups on both the light side and on the dark side.
I think everybody.
I think so.
Came back. Even our bad guy's assistant lady, or his little helper and everything.
Was that the one who was going around with the spiked collar?
Yes.
Okay. Mesa, I think her name is.
Something like that, yeah. But she was, again, same actress from the original, from the first one, everything like that. But it was nice because at least that character had a little bit more spotlight, and you got to see some humanity with some of these characters.
Yeah, and yet this is another one wrought with a lot of subplots, and the fact that you've got
convoluted subplots.
A burgeoning romance, that we have seen from the previous one. Because I'm going to be trying to be a lot less spoilery about this second one in comparison. But there is a character and there's a mystery aspect to it that is going around and against the law, training people presumably without your proper paperwork or whatever, targeting old women and draining them with these little needles. And Anton and the rest of them have a feeling about who it is, but there's a little bit of bait and switch, and could it be this father who has a son that's a vampire? Could it be the boy from the original one that chose the dark? There's lots of theorizing that you can basically do there, and this one felt a lot less action centric until the big bit at the end at the party. It was more so about character development, dare I say, and the interpersonality of relationships and stuff.
Yeah,
it was less action centric.
For both of these movies being a fairly slowish pace.
Oh yeah,
the second
they feel like they're 2 hours.
The second film was such a such a drag compared to the first one.
Yeah,
and
it is.
again, it was just are they perfect movies? No, like I said, but they're definitely enjoyable.
Yeah.
So real quick, just
Acting.
acting real quick.
We've like covered a lot about the story without spoiling too much of either.
Yeah. Acting real quick. Just for a quick gloss over. Nobody felt short. Nobody stuck out personally. And I think it had a lot to do with I'm not familiar with everyone's acting capabilities.
Same.
So it's just that I've seen him in this. Yeah, they were enjoyable.
Yeah, I think Anton's love interest for me, I felt was one of the strongest characters in this.
She was the better actor.
She was very well developed, and she holds her own in some strange scenes in the second film with that Olga character, who we get a lot of interesting backstory about her age and how she was trying to find the chalk at one particular point, and it does lead to some amusing, oh, you're in someone else's body, and I guess that was amusing enough with that stuff in Day Watch, the second film, stretch her acting a bit, but
yeah. And one thing I bringing up that character real quick, I don't like they could have definitely done without the whole hooker attire,
yeah,
and everything. That just why
I felt the way
she
that
went
most
from
of
this
the women,
nice, mousy, classy
yeah,
girl, and then you dress her up to look like a cheap Van Buren hooker.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean the women on the dark side that were dressed all kind of skanky and stuff like that. I mean, I'm into that goth kind of
I like some kink. Don't get me wrong,
industrial kind of punkish sort of look, but it was a little overdone for my taste. I'm like, am I on Vampire Freaks, the dating website back again from the 2000s or something? But
it's a name I thought I'd never hear again. Holy shit!
It's been a long time, everybody. But that's kind of the aesthetic, and I guess the acting of certain characters too. But then again, who am I to criticize and these social norms among these gifted people and stuff like that? But and a lot of the humor didn't really hit with like some of the goofiness of the characters on the light side, specifically the Night Watch. It's more so in the first movie with just kind of the silly antics of flipping vehicles and almost like borderline slapstick at times. But I actually thought Anton was a little bit better in the second film. He was more calm and composed, and a little less that actor portraying him felt a little less fish out of water. And also, I didn't feel like the main villain on the dark side was quite as cartoony in the second film as he was in the first one when he's playing the video games and all of that sort of silliness.
But that little
it was
play,
cool how that manifested.
Yeah, exactly. The play into the ending with the whole video game, but that was a cool little touch.
Envisioning this epic battle.
Exactly, and that's one thing I like. I'm really intrigued on going into the books because I want to see how they expand into all that and like the reasoning of why he was. Like, we get the reasoning of why he was doing the video game, but in a sense, it's like, well, you developed this game just to try and figure this out?
Yeah.
Or like,
it's almost like maybe playing out certain respective scenarios to see how you could win.
Exactly,
kind
yeah.
of thing. Experimentation. But,
other than that, the cinematography and
it's a slick-looking
visual,
movie
it
for
definitely,
the most part.
It
Both
definitely
of them.
was. Especially with the camera work, and you can see he was refining it with this, and then he more so, I would say, perfected with Wanted, and then once he got off with his other films, like I said, Abe Lincoln Vampire Hunter,
which I stand by liking that movie.
I do too.
Even if the book is a lot better, it's still a really it's a fun
you
film.
can see, especially too with even the fight scenes between Night and Day Watch and into Abe Lincoln Vampire Hunter, the similarities and the styles and how that how that was shot. It's I wouldn't necessarily say original, but it's refreshing enough because it's easy enough to muck it up.
Yeah. I would say that like in the post-Matrix landscape that we were existing in the early 2000s, and yet
because that was groundbreaking with the Matrix.
Oh yeah, everything was kind of copying the speed it up, slow it down sort of thing, and
bullet time.
You definitely get that in both of these films. Less in the second film, I would say, because I still feel like the second film is less action-centric until the third act finale. And then there's also a really silly bit where this
The car.
this chick is driving a car on the side of this building, and I'm just like,
Yeah,
okay, that's
yeah.
fine. But I mean, there is still some very slickly shot stuff, and both of these were made on relatively meager budgets, like in the low millions. I think even Daywatch, the second one, was only like a $4 million movie.
Something like that. But like with compared to like especially style and tone wise, Daywatch was more whimsical.
Yeah.
Versus Night Watch on that the dark ominous kind of side.
I did well, especially with how the endings panned out in comparison, because the ending to the second film is relatively sunny in comparison, but that's where it felt more like a part 1 and a part 2 to me, where the story was relatively resolved, I guess. But yeah, I mean, they're good-looking movies, and they are accomplished, and you can see it's a talented dude who is refining his craft, and you see the matured visuals and just shot selection and stuff like that in his later movies, that were made here in the States.
Most definitely.
Music?
Yeah, I was just about to say, real quick, music. Per se, again, I'm not really familiar with the Russian artists and everything like that, so there's not a whole lot of like, oh, I know that song, that was a cool song, but it was a fun enough soundtrack and score just to kind of keep you in it. There was a couple times like with the music choice, it was a little goofy and campy, but again, it's the normal radio stuff that's played over there.
Yeah, and I think the goofy campiness was in some of that traditional like Russian Kazakh sort of stuff with like the almost accordion and like some of the more traditional instruments around there, and those were the scenes that they seemed to play when the camp factor crept in a little bit. But then you've got like some kind of dope industrial, heavy, metal-y kind of hard rock guitars, specifically with some of the chase scenes. And there's a theme they come back to a few times that I quite liked. I think it's even in the second movie as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Dude, I would love to have that truck that he had. Oh man, he had those like nice 4 tanks of nitrous and everything. That thing was badass.
And also fortifying the front, like in the second movie, where they're smashing it through the.
So cool. That was so cool.
We survived.
Yeah, well, we did.
yeah, exactly. And then there's also a little bit of that sort of early 2000s, like Euro techno kind of ravey sort of thing, at some of the other bits and stuff. And so, I mean, it did show from that musical standpoint, I would say, merging of the old and the new, liking the new electronic and heavier sort of sounds, but then also in certain scenes going for, the stuff that the country's known for musically throughout history.
Yep.
So yeah, I think
that's probably just gonna do it for our review of Night Watch and Day Watch.
Lots of insight for you, SK. We had to combine them into double sort of review because they do feel like two parts of a whole in a lot of ways. Yeah,
and then maybe maybe in the future, Fuego and I can do a book comparison and everything like that. If we're able to get a hold of that. So
I gotta consult Audible, see what's.
I know. I was thinking about that too. Yeah. So I don't know. Who knows? Maybe we might do a review on that come in the future.
Could it be?
I don't know.
Yeah, that would be some patron sort of discussion.
Yeah, exactly.
So, we appreciate you, man.
But yeah, other than that, if you guys want to become a patron, links down in the description below. We got monthly tier stuff you can sign up for. We got boogie boxes, things like that. Or even exclusive episodes that aren't even released on the normal channel.
Yeah, request reviews, commentaries.
Exactly.
Tell us what to do. We're here for you.
Other than that, hit that subscribe button, ding that bell, hit that like button so you can keep all up to date with all of our new videos, see all of our pretty faces. Other than that, from The Horse Show, I've been Robert Duell.
And gracias a Jaime and Fuego.
And remember, stay scared.